back to another episode of Planet Hunters Coffee Chat. I'm Cassie Prolongo, and of course, joining me is Nora Eisner. Hey, Nora.
Hi, Cassie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you as always.
I see.
All right, so we thought for this week we would do something, again, a little bit fun. I think we're in a bit of a festive mood, or maybe it's just because it's around the holidays. But we're like, you know what? We've given you guys some projects, you're working on some cool things. Let's just have a couple of fun episodes. You know, it's okay to have a little bit of downtime. Truthfully, it's nice to have a little bit of downtime. So we thought we would do something kind of fun. And that is really expanding on this. You might have seen if you follow us on social media, where we do Light Curve of the Week. Shout out to our awesome social media person, Katrina, by the way, and working, of course, with Nora to get these Light Curve of the Weeks out. But they're quite popular on our social media posts. And if you're not following, you know, hopefully you can follow us, but it's okay if you're not on social media. I totally understand. So let's expand a little bit, Nora, on these light curves, and specifically some of these interesting light curves. Ones that you mentioned, I think that people may have spotted before or talked about it under Planet Hunters, the talk section, the forum section. So let's get into it. What are some fun light curves that you've actually seen or spotted?
Yeah, let's definitely do that. I love light curves. I feel like on Planet Hunters and just, well, in what I do a lot of, when I just look at light curves in my job, you can get really excited about light curves and be like, what is this? What is going on with this star? And you can just, you know, wild things. So yeah, as you said, a lot of them get kind of flagged on talk on the discussion forums. So it's good to delve a little bit deeper into some of them. So
yeah. It's not just fun, of course, looking for an exoplanet. It's looking at like what kind of cool light curves are out there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of light curves are just very boring and flat. So actually, if you haven't been on Planet Hunters TESS and you're seeing this is not what every light curve looks like. Most light curves do not look like this, but you might have seen some like this and wondered what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we will start off with this one. So this is a dwarf nova, or a light curve of a dwarf nova. So very briefly, a dwarf nova is a system where you have two stars orbiting around one another, where one star is a main sequence star. So if you remember back a couple of episodes ago, that is a star in kind of the middle age of its life. And the other star is what is known as a white dwarf. So that is the stellar end product. So that star has reached the end of its life and has now become what is known as a white dwarf. Now, white dwarfs do not have a lot of gas around them, but main sequence stars do. They have this hydrogen envelope going around it. So as these two stars, so this white dwarf and this main sequence star, are going around one another, that main sequence star is dumping some of its material onto that white dwarf. It's just moving material over to it because the white dwarf is attracting it with gravity. And that is forming a disk around that white dwarf. Now, that material from that disk then sometimes falls onto the white dwarf, and that causes these bursts in brightness that we can see in, for example, here. So we see this kind of burst in light. We see a spike in the light curve, and that's because material is falling onto that white dwarf.
Wow. Okay. And is this something that's consistent as well? Is this where we have around you have days, let's see, on the bottom axis. So is that something where you'd see a consistent spike, or not really?
No, that's a great question. We think it's not periodic. We say it's quasi-periodic. They happen on kind of rough timescales of what we'd expect, but they can also happen quite randomly, which is another thing that makes them quite exciting to study. And you can actually see, so the dips that you can see here, those that's from the binary. So that's the two stars orbiting around.
Gotcha. So this would make an interesting topic if people were to say, hey, what is this? And they would probably go to the talk forum and flag this. And it'd be a good discussion piece. Gotcha. Oh, very cool.
Yes, it's a neat little system. All right, we have another light curve. We've got 4 of these, so people.
All right, let's go number 2.
All right, this is
totally different.
Yeah, you're so right. It looks absolutely totally different.
Yeah.
This is what is known as a Cepheid variable. So this is an evolved star. So this star is no longer on that main sequence. It is slightly older, hasn't reached the end of its life yet, not as old as a white dwarf, but is in that kind of post-main sequence part of evolution. And it's specifically at a part of its evolution where it is unstable. So because it's unstable, it is expanding and contracting and getting bigger and smaller. And that's what's causing these changes in brightness. Because when the star is bigger, it's giving off more light. And when it's smaller, it's giving off less light.
Right.
But the really exciting thing about this star, or these kind of types of stars, these Cepheid variables, is that the change, or the kind of the period of these changes in brightness, the separation between these kind of increases and decreases, that is directly related to how bright that object is. So when we look at something, when we look at a star in the sky, we can look at it and we can say, oh, we can compare it to other stars and see how bright it is, but that doesn't tell us how bright it actually is, because that brightness that we see depends on how far away it is, depends on how much light is lost on the way because of other things getting in the way, such as dust. But by looking at these types of stars, we can know how bright they are at the source, and therefore we can know exactly how far away they are from us.
Oh, wow.
So really important stars in the history of astronomy for determining how far away things are, and how also for determining how big the universe is. So yeah,
reminds me of a lighthouse almost.
a lighthouse.
Like a lighthouse star. Because it's going up anyway. So.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because stars where we know the brightness at the source, so that how we call it the intrinsic brightness, this is the brightness if we were stood right next to them, we call those standard candles. So that's
oh, very cool. Okay, great. Okay, so that's the second. Now, what is our third one?
So the third one is somewhat similar. This is called an Rlie star. So we can think of this as the lower mass cousin of the Cepheid variables. They are also post-main sequence stars. They also kind of have these rapid spike. Well, these are slightly different. They have very rapid spikes in kind of the increase in the brightness, and then a slower decline in the brightness. That's how you tell the two apart. The other one, if we flick back to this one, this is more the same kind of speed going up, or same rate of change in brightness going up as coming down. Whereas for the Rlies, it's very rapid going up and then slower coming back down. But just like the Cepheids, we can use the periods between the periods of these changes in brightness to determine their intrinsic brightness, and therefore they can tell us the distance of how far away these are. So yeah.
I have a kind of a silly question, and as always, I always have my silly questions. But now, me being still very new to citizen science work and looking at these, if I were to have seen something like this that's come through, I would have thought initially like, oh, something was maybe wrong with the instrumentation. I mean, is it important when you see things like this? I mean, there's past examples, of course, that people can look at with Planet Hunters TESS, but is it okay to like flag and have a chat with, other citizen scientists about that?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So you can use hashtags on Planet Hunters Talk. So if you think you know what it is, or if you do know what it is, it's very useful to kind of tag it with that and kind of tell other people what you think it is, or just ask a question on it and see whether either the scientists or other citizen scientists have more information on that target. It's also often very useful to get the tick ID from underneath the light curve and look it up on, for example, Sinbad. Sinbad often tells you what kind of star it is. So yeah, we covered Sinbad in earlier episodes.
We're going to drop some links at the end of this episode because we're harkening back to a couple of our past ones, which is good. It's good to go back and refresh. Okay, so it's okay. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, even if you're new and other people have been doing this for a long time, just ask questions. If you're confused on that, or like me, I was thinking, oh, maybe there's something wrong with the instrumentation. Clearly that's not the case. Just ask questions. It's okay. It's all right. Somebody will be there to help out, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our final one for today. Remember, we're showing exciting light curves. Not all light curves on Planet Hunters look like this. And Cassie's very excited about this one.
My eyes almost bugged out of my head. Holy cow.
Well, so I've called this one Estella Physicist Nightmare.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, and I don't don't know what to say about this one. There's just a lot. It's just a bit of a mess. There are a lot of eclipses from lots of different objects. So when you see a light curve like this, the number one task is to try and find out how many periodic things there are in this. Are any of these always separated by the same amount? Are the ones that have the same depth separated by the same amount? Why are there some that are deeper? So I can actually tell you that this example here, this is a known quadruple system. So this is 2 binaries. So I do this because I use 2 fingers to one binary. So each finger is a star. They are going around one another, but those binaries are also going around one another.
No, really, Nora, I'm a little disappointed. Where are the props for this one? I don't, there's no props.
The props are mounted to the wall, apparently.
Next time. So is this truly a nightmare, or is this something where, as an astronomer, you would maybe get, excited because it's something different? Or would you think, oh, there must be an issue with this? Or let's go back to the day. I guess the question that I'm asking is, when you see this, would you say something's wrong either with instrumentation? Let's go back, make sure everything's okay. Is the data cleaned up all right? Would you go through like the various steps? What would you advise citizen scientists to do in that case too?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the first thing to check when you see multiple periodic signals like you do here is whether that is one system or whether one of them is in the background. So what often happens when you see multiple periodic signals is actually you just have 2 binaries somewhere close to one another, but not actually physically related to one another. So one of them could be a background eclipsing binary. So good tests to do for that would be the pixel by pixel light curve plot that we talked about previously, to look at whether the centroid motion moves for any of the eclipses, anything that can tell you whether it's actually happening somewhere in the background and not on the correct pixel. That would be the first test to do. The second test to do is, especially in this example here, you can see that some of those eclipses are deeper. So that's if multiple eclipses line up and occur at exactly the same time. So another thing to look for is, for example, the eclipse timing variations. So this is something that we talked about in the previous episode. So we talked about transit timing variations, but when it's happening for stars, we call it eclipse timing variations, but it's effectively the same thing. Same thing of the eclipses not being very strictly periodic. So even though those effects, the transit timing variations for planets is very, very small, for eclipse timing variations in star systems, those effects can be much larger and can be on the order of maybe tens of minutes as opposed to just a couple of minutes. So that'd be another thing to look for, to look for those periodic signals and see what times those eclipses are happening. And if they are not regular, that could be because those 2 systems are actually related. So yeah, this is a system that we would get quite excited about and we would look into further. As I said, this is a known quadruple system. So of course we wouldn't look into this one any further at the time being anyway. But yeah, they can be very fun.
So it's a nightmare, but also a learning experience, it sounds like, because there's a lot of processes and steps to go into to try to determine what the heck is going on. But the best part about it is that you have a community to talk to so that everyone can talk together, and of course, reach out to Planet Hunters TESS under the talk forum section, or talk to us, Planet Hunters Coffee Chat. Cool. Well, that was really exciting. Okay, so we're thinking of making this maybe a few more episodes. Let us know what you think, and we might even do something where we phone a friend and talk a little bit to another particular person. This person was the guest host before, so it's not throwing in somebody brand new. But we think it's interesting to talk about. And of course, a lot of these things are already on Zooniverse, but I think it's good to have a chat a little bit more about it, especially for any of our new citizen scientists out there, just to give them a taste or a flavor of, different things that they might eventually come across. So let us know. Have a chat. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Nora. As always, it's so great to learn all these things. And we definitely did talk a little bit about our previous episodes, so we'll drop those links as well. And until next time, take care, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.